today is from Genesis chapter 12, beginning at the first verse. But the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarah and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired in Haran, and they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. When they had come to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Morah. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and invoked the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on by stages toward Negeb. Here is the reading.
So, as you might remember, we are journeying through the story of Scripture. We talked about Noah and the ark last week, and now we are up to Abraham and this promise that God makes to Abraham. God tells Abraham that he's going to be the father of many nations. And I want to talk a little bit about what a nation was in the Old Testament to help us make sense of what that promise means. A nation wasn't what we consider a nation to be these days. It wasn't like a nation with Canada or Germany or Finland or Iran. A nation was a tribe. A nation was a group of people who worked together, and what they tried to do again and again was to get bigger. And can you guess how a tribe would get bigger? Well, by having lots of kids and by war. They would overthrow another tribe. They would take another tribe. And so these two ways were the ways that these tribes tried to grow and to grow and to grow. So there was a fair amount of animosity between tribes, and people were trying to overthrow each other, and things would be pretty violent. If tribe A was able to overtake tribe B, they would probably overtake the soldiers, and then they would claim what's called the spoils of war, the women, the children, and they would claim them as property, and then they would move on to get more tribes and more tribes. And so this was this really violent kind of society. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of bloodshed in the Old Testament. It's part of what makes the New Testament so special. It's part of what makes the story that Jesus comes to tell and to proclaim and to live so incredible and so life-changing. So the Old Testament starts in this world where these tribes are the way of life, what's happening. And now there's this thing that happens. God says to Abram, whose name is soon going to become Abraham, comes and says to Abram, I'm going to take you, and I'm going to make you a father of all nations. I'm going to bless you, and you are going to multiply. Now, multiplying in this way, the Hebrew word for it, means you're going to have children. Cool, right? Except Abraham is 75 years old, and he's married to Sarah, who cannot have children. So you know that Abraham's got to be thinking, okay, now, but what makes things worse is that Sarah, who then her name is Sarai, it's going to change later too, but Sarai, women who can't have children back in that age, now think now about how infertility for women who want to have children, how painful and how difficult that is, right? If you know people who have gone through that, really, really a horrible, hard thing, devastating. Put it back in about 1900 BC, it's about 1900 times harder. Because women were wanted around for their ability to make the tribe bigger. And so this was really, really a shameful thing. So now Sarai is about 65 years old. She's told she can't, she's known she isn't able to have children. Now God says, oh, you're going to be the father of many nations. You are going to have children, and they're going to multiply, and they're going to multiply, and they're going to multiply. And you have to kind of wonder what Abraham is thinking when this promise comes from God. This passage, this little beginning from Genesis 12, is the whole beginning of the story of not only Christianity, but Judaism and the Islamic faith. Abraham is the father of all three of these faiths. It's one thing that we all have in common. And this little passage at the beginning of Genesis 12 starts it all. So that's the backdrop. It's where we're going. And God comes to Abraham and says, I will make your name great. I will bless you. You will multiply. It seems against the odds. It seems like it's not going to happen. But you are going to multiply, and there will be nations, tribes, that will be yours. The whole world will be yours. But it's not going to be by violence. It's going to be by a different way. So this is Abram's call. This is Abram's beginning. Except he has to do something. Did you catch that? And I'm not going to say that it's easy to go to Chuck E. Cheese, but it's not as easy as that. He has to leave everything behind and go to a land that God will show him. He doesn't even know where he's going to go. He has to leave it all behind. He has to leave all the familiarity, all the territory, all the land, all the place that he knows behind, everything he knows, and go to this new place. But since preaching isn't a lecture, I want to invite you to do something, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes of quiet time to do it. I want you to think about in your life, from the beginning until now, about 5 or 6 or 7 significant times in your life. Chronological. And don't pick getting born. I trust you, that was significant. If that didn't happen, you won't be here. But think about times in your life. Maybe it was going to college or getting a job or meeting someone special or having a baby, or maybe it was a time of devastation. Maybe it was a time, maybe 9/11 was one of your times. Think about significant events in your life, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes just to think about that. Sort of look up towards me if you have your altars and when I see those eyes. So those significant events are in your head, and I want you to consider those to be stepping stones for your life. Imagine that your life is movement across a river, and that you've been going to these stepping stones. And you know, if you've ever crossed a river, stepping stones aren't always the easiest things to get across, right? They can be slippery. You might want a hand to hold on to as you're going across, and sometimes there's a hand there, and sometimes there's not. And you look down the stream and you wonder how bad can it be, and sometimes it can be pretty bad looking. But as you think about making your way across these stepping stones, you can think for a minute about those rocks that you step on. Well, one of the things that Abraham does is he gets to these places that God shows him, is he builds altars. He builds these special places. When God shows him a place, he stops and he builds an altar. Now, they're not built like this altar, wood and wheel casters on the bottom, so you can roll it around and take it with him. But altars then were made out of rocks and mud. Not huge, probably this big. They were so they could be seen if you were approaching them, but you wouldn't be able to see them really from a mile away. And they were used for a couple of things. They were used as a place to worship. Sometimes when we think of altars, we think about animal sacrifice and that sort of thing. They were sometimes used for that, but more often they were used as a place to worship, to just gather people around and to get people to pray and to think about what's important. But they were also used as reminders of God's promise. Hey, God got us from that stepping stone back there to this stepping stone here. We've made it this far. This altar is a stepping stone. We've made it. And then you remember the promise and you keep on going. Abram would build another altar. And then he'd keep on going. And he'd build another altar. So this is the way that Abraham worked as he made his journey. As he went all the way to the places where God would lead him. And he never knew exactly where he was going next. So think about your stepping stones. My guess is that when you found yourself on one of your stepping stones, especially the slipperiest ones, maybe when you didn't feel that there was a hand there to hang on to, you weren't sure what the next stepping stone was going to be. You didn't know exactly what was going to happen next. And that might be what makes those stepping stones so important. There's a couple ways to approach life's stepping stones. One is that we can just bore down and try to get through it and maybe walk and get our feet wet until we find some solid ground again. Or the other is we can call it one of life's defining moments. We can say, okay, this is happening. What do I have with me? What is in my toolbox? My faith, the love in my life, the ways that God has shown up with me before, in what seemed like it was against the odds. Can those be my strength to get to the next? And if we can look at our stepping stones as defining moments in our lives, like Abraham looked at the altars that he built, our blinders fall off. And we can go boldly to the next stepping stone, whatever it might be. See, that's the thing. Most of us are probably on a stepping stone of some sort right now. And we don't have any idea what the next stone is going to be. We might know what we want it to be. We might have told God 16 times what we want it to be. The thing is, God doesn't always take our advice. Don't you hate that? But wouldn't it be cool if we could just walk forward with that kind of faith? You know, it wasn't easy for Abraham. He spent a lot of time being pretty stressed about where it was that he was going. Why was he leading these people? How come he couldn't do it the ways that he always did it before? What was really wrong with that whole conquest thing anyway? It seemed to work out fine for thousands of years. But this was going to be the beginning of a new way of living in the world. And it was the way that was going to point to Christ. And when Jesus comes, he offers a whole new invitation that says everything is different. We're going to do it differently. So I want to invite you today to consider your stepping stone, where you are in your life right now. And to think about what you've had behind you, those stepping stones, and what you may have learned or gained from them. And I want to invite you to allow God to grow your faith. And I want you to put together your toolbox so that you can go forward to that next stepping stone without feeling like you have to hide or just get to it really fast. You know, there are a couple of different ways to go to the zoo. One is that you have your checklist of animals and your pencil. Zebra check, rhino check, giraffe check, fish check, snake skip that one, whatever it is, and you just check it off. And the other way to go is that you go and you look at the animals and you recognize that you might not even see everyone, but you say, oh, rhino, they do this. Look at that one do that. Check out the lion. Huh. Oh, the panda cub, it's doing this now. I remember when it was born. And you cherish the moments. I want to invite you not to just check off the stepping stones of your life, but to really live them. And to recognize that God has blessing in them. Sometimes it can be really hard to find, but it's worth checking them out deeply and looking inside, because each and every one has all sorts of gifts inside. Amen.